I never thought I'd be writing this, but here I am at 2 a.m., crying into my laptop keyboard while my husband sleeps peacefully upstairs. I feel like my entire life has been a lie and I don't know what to do anymore. Let me start from the beginning. My name is Sarah, I'm 34, and I live in a small suburban town in Ohio with my husband Mark 36 and our son Tyler 8. We've been married for 10 years, together for 12. Mark works as an IT manager at a local company, and I'm a part-time teacher at Tyler's elementary school. From the outside, we probably look like the perfect American family: white picket fence, golden retriever named Buddy, and a minivan in the driveway. But everything I thought I knew about my family just came crashing down 3 weeks ago, and I'm still reeling. Mark and I met in college. He was this sweet, nerdy guy in my psychology class who always had the right answers but was too shy to speak up. I was the outgoing one, president of my sorority, always organizing parties and events. We were opposites, but it worked. He grounded me, and I helped him come out of his shell. We got married right after graduation. It was one of those beautiful spring weddings where everything goes perfectly. My dress was gorgeous, the weather was ideal. And Mark cried when I walked down the aisle. His parents flew in from California, mine drove up from Kentucky, and all our college friends were there. It felt like a fairy tale. The first few years of marriage were blissful. We moved to Ohio because Mark got a great job offer, and I was happy to start fresh somewhere new. We rented a cute little apartment, got Buddy as a puppy, and spent our weekends exploring our new town. We talked about kids constantly: how many we wanted, what we'd name them, what kind of parents we'd be. When I was 25, we decided to start trying for a baby. Month after month, nothing happened. I tracked my ovulation religiously, we timed everything perfectly, and I took pregnancy test after pregnancy test, only to see that devastating single line. After a year of trying, we went to a fertility specialist. The tests were humiliating and expensive. They poked and prodded both of us, ran blood work, did ultrasounds, and put us through procedure after procedure. The diagnosis was unexplained infertility, which basically means they had no clue why we couldn't get pregnant. Everything looked normal on paper. We tried IUI, first intrauterine insemination. 3 rounds, 3 failures. I remember lying on that cold table each time, praying that this would be the one that worked. Mark would hold my hand and whisper encouragement, but I could see the disappointment in his eyes too. Finally, our doctor recommended IVF. It was our last shot, and we knew it. The process was grueling: daily hormone injections that made me feel crazy. Constant monitoring appointments, and the emotional roller coaster of hoping this time would be different. Mark gave me the shots every morning before work, his hands shaking every single time. He hated hurting me, even though we both knew it was necessary. The first IVF cycle failed. I was devastated. We'd put everything into it: financially, emotionally, physically. I spent 3 days in bed crying, convinced I was broken, that I'd never be a mother. Mark was incredible during that time. He brought me tea, rubbed my back when the hormones made me sick, and never once made me feel like it was my fault. We decided to try one more time. If this didn't work, we'd accept that biological children weren't in the cards for us and maybe look into adoption. The second cycle was our miracle. When Dr. Martinez called with the positive pregnancy test results, I literally collapsed on our kitchen floor sobbing. Mark found me there 10 minutes later when he came home from work. The pregnancy wasn't easy. I had severe morning sickness for the first 4 months, was on bed rest for the last 6 weeks, and had to have an emergency C-section when Tyler decided to come 3 weeks early. But when they placed that tiny, perfect baby in my arms, everything else faded away. He had Mark's dark hair and my green eyes, and I fell in love instantly. Tyler was worth every shot, every procedure, every moment of pain. He was our miracle baby, and we treated him like one. Mark was an amazing father from day one, changing diapers at 3 a.m., reading bedtime stories with different voices for every character, teaching Tyler to ride a bike in our driveway. I threw myself into being the perfect mom: homemade baby food, developmental activities, mommy and me classes. The perfect life cracks. Things between Mark and me started getting rocky about 2 years ago. It wasn't anything dramatic at first, just the usual married with kids stress. Mark was working longer hours, I was overwhelmed teaching and managing Tyler's increasingly busy schedule, and somewhere along the way, we stopped talking to each other about anything that mattered. Our conversations became logistics: who's picking up Tyler? What's for dinner? Did you pay the electric bill? We'd go days without really looking at each other. When was the last time we went on a date? I couldn't remember. The breaking point came 6 months ago when I found out Mark had been talking to his ex-girlfriend Emma on Facebook. Not sexting or anything obviously inappropriate, but they were messaging regularly, talking about their lives, sharing memories from college. When I confronted him about it, he got defensive. She's just a friend, Sarah. We're just catching up. Then why did you hide it from me? Why didn't you mention that you've been talking to your ex for months? Because I knew you'd react like this. You're being paranoid. That fight lasted 3 days. I slept in the guest room, and Tyler kept asking why mommy and daddy were sad. Mark eventually agreed to stop talking to Emma, but the trust was damaged. I started paying attention to his phone, his computer, his behavior in ways I never had before. That's when I noticed other things. How he'd get texts at weird hours and quickly put his phone face down. How he'd go for walks after dinner and come back smelling like perfume not mine. How he'd started going to work events that never seemed to exist on his company's calendar. I confronted him again 2 months ago. This time, he didn't deny it. I've been seeing someone, he said quietly, not meeting my eyes. It's not serious. It just happened. The world tilted. We were sitting in our living room, the same room where we'd assembled Tyler's first Christmas tree. Where we'd celebrated his first steps, where we'd read him thousands of bedtime stories. And my husband was telling me he was cheating on me. Who? I managed to whisper. It doesn't matter. It matters to me. Who is it, Mark? Jessica. From work. Jessica. I'd met her at Mark's company Christmas party last year. She was young, maybe 26, blonde, bubbly, everything I felt like I wasn't anymore. She'd complimented Tyler's picture that Mark had on his phone, said how lucky he was to have such a beautiful family. Mark begged me not to leave him. He swore it was over with Jessica, that it meant nothing, that he wanted to work on our marriage. Against my better judgment, I agreed to try counseling. Maybe it was for Tyler's sake, maybe I still loved my husband despite everything, or maybe I was just terrified of starting over at 34. Dr. Patricia Chen became our marriage counselor. She was patient, understanding, and forced us to actually communicate for the first time in years. In those sterile office sessions, Mark admitted he'd felt disconnected from me since Tyler was born. He said I'd become so focused on being the perfect mother that I'd stopped being his wife. I felt invisible in my own home, he said during one particularly brutal session. Everything was about Tyler. Your whole world revolved around him, and I was just there, providing income and occasionally helping with homework. It hurt because there was truth in it. I had thrown myself completely into motherhood. Every decision I made was filtered through what was best for Tyler. But wasn't that what good mothers did? I felt like I was doing everything alone, I shot back. You worked late every night. You never helped with his school projects or doctor appointments. You showed up for the fun stuff, baseball games and birthday parties, but left all the actual parenting to me. We were both right, and we were both wrong. Our marriage had slowly died while we were busy raising our son, and neither of us had noticed until it was almost too late. The counseling seemed to be helping. We started having date nights again, awkward at first, but gradually more natural. Mark cut back his hours at work. I made an effort to pay attention to him, not just Tyler. We even started being intimate again, something that had become rare and mechanical over the past few years. But in the back of my mind, I couldn't stop thinking about Jessica. Was it really over? Could I ever trust him completely again? I found myself checking his phone when he was in the shower. Looking through his email when he left his laptop open. I hated who I'd become: suspicious, paranoid, constantly on edge. 3 weeks ago, Tyler came down with a nasty case of strep throat. His pediatrician, Kim, wanted to run some additional tests because Tyler's symptoms were more severe than typical strep. She mentioned that sometimes genetic factors can make certain infections worse, and asked about our family medical history. I don't know much about my biological family's history, I told her. I was adopted as a baby, and my adoption records were sealed. Dr. Kim suggested we do a basic genetic screening for Tyler to identify any predispositions we should know about. It seemed like a good idea. Knowledge is power when it comes to health, right? The test required cheek swabs from Tyler and both parents for comparison. Simple enough. We did the swabs right there in the office, and Dr. Kim said we'd have results in about a week. I honestly forgot about it. Tyler's strep cleared up with antibiotics, life went back to normal, and I was focused on other things: Tyler's upcoming school play, a big project at work, and planning Mark's 37th birthday party. Dr. Kim called me on a Tuesday afternoon while I was at school. I was in my classroom grading papers when her nurse said the doctor needed to speak with me urgently. "Sarah, I need you to come in to discuss Tyler's genetic results. Are you available today?" Something in her voice made my stomach drop. Is something wrong? Does Tyler have a genetic condition? I'd rather discuss this in person. Can you come in around 4 p.m.? The rest of the day was torture. I couldn't concentrate on anything. I kept imagining terrible diagnoses: rare genetic diseases, cancer predispositions, life-altering conditions that would change Tyler's future forever. Mark was in a meeting when I called, so I left a voicemail asking him to meet me at Drive Kim's office. I picked Tyler up from school early, telling him we needed to run a quick errand. He complained about missing recess, but I barely heard him. My mind was racing with worst-case scenarios. Dr. Kim's office felt colder than usual that afternoon. Tyler was in the waiting room with a nurse, working on a puzzle, while Mark and I sat across from Dr. Kim's desk. She had a manila folder in front of her, and her usual warm smile was replaced by a concerned, professional expression. The genetic screening revealed some unexpected results. She began carefully. "Tyler is healthy. There are no genetic conditions you need to worry about. But the family comparison showed something unusual." She opened the folder and pulled out a paper covered in scientific terms and percentages that meant nothing to me. According to the DNA analysis, Mark is definitely Tyler's biological father. The markers match perfectly. "But Sarah," she paused, looking at me with sympathy, "you're not Tyler's biological mother." The words hit me like a physical blow. I actually felt dizzy, like the air had been sucked out of the room. "That's impossible," I whispered. "I carried him. I gave birth to him. I have stretch marks and a C-section scar to prove it." "I understand this is shocking. But the genetic markers are very clear. There's less than a 0.01% chance of error." Mark grabbed my hand, but I pulled away. "What does this mean? How is this possible?" Dr. Kim leaned forward. "The most likely explanation is that there was a mix-up during your IVF treatment. Either with the eggs or the embryos. It's extremely rare, but it has happened at other fertility clinics." The room started spinning. 8 years of Tyler's life flashed through my mind: every midnight feeding, every scraped knee I'd kissed better, every bedtime story, every proud moment at his school events. I'd loved this child more than my own life, and now I was being told he wasn't even mine? "So whose child is he?" Mark asked quietly. "We don't know. That would require additional investigation and DNA testing with other families who used the clinic around the same time." I stood up abruptly, knocking over my chair. "I need air. I need to get out of here." I stumbled out of the office, past Tyler, who looked up from his puzzle with confusion. "Mommy, are you okay?" I couldn't answer him. I couldn't even look at him without feeling like my heart was being ripped out of my chest. I made it to my car before I completely broke down. The aftermath. The drive home was a blur. Mark followed in his car with Tyler, who kept asking why Mommy had left so suddenly. I heard Mark making excuses through the phone, something about Mommy not feeling well, needing to rest. That night, after Tyler was asleep, Mark and I had the most difficult conversation of our lives. We sat at our kitchen table, the same table where we'd eaten thousands of meals as a family, and tried to process what we'd learned. "This doesn't change anything," Mark kept saying. "He's still our son. Biology doesn't matter." But it did matter. Not because I loved Tyler any less. If anything, the thought of losing him made me realize how much he meant to me. It mattered because it meant there was another woman out there who was Tyler's biological mother. It meant there might be another child, my biological child, that I'd never met. What if she wants him back? I sobbed. What if his real mother finds out and wants Tyler? That's not how it works, Sarah. We've raised him for 8 years. We're his legal parents. But what if there's another little boy or girl out there who's biologically mine? What if they need me, and I don't even know they exist? The questions consumed me. I couldn't sleep, couldn't eat, couldn't think about anything else. Every time I looked at Tyler, I saw a stranger. Not because I loved him any less, but because I couldn't stop wondering about his real mother. Did Tyler look like her? Did he have her mannerisms, her personality traits that I'd always attributed to myself? I called in sick to work for the rest of the week. Mark took time off too, and we spent hours researching fertility clinic mix-ups, talking to lawyers, and trying to figure out what to do next. The fertility clinic we'd used, Midwest Reproductive Services, had closed down 3 years ago after several malpractice lawsuits. The doctor who'd performed our IVF procedures, Richard Steinberg, had his license revoked and moved to another state. Getting any information from them was going to be nearly impossible. But I had to try. I hired a private investigator named David Martinez, no relation to our old fertility doctor, to look into other families who'd used the clinic around the same time we did. It was expensive and probably hopeless, but I couldn't live with the uncertainty. 2 weeks after the revelation, while I was still struggling to process everything, David called with an update. He'd found several families who'd used Midwest Reproductive Services around the time Tyler was conceived. One name on the list made my blood run cold. Emma Patterson. Used the clinic in March 2016, about 6 weeks after your procedure. Emma, Mark's ex-girlfriend from college. The one he'd been messaging on Facebook. The one who had supposedly just been a friend. I hung up and immediately called Mark at work. We need to talk. Now. Come home. Sarah, I can't just leave in the middle of the day. Emma used our fertility clinic. She had IVF 6 weeks after us. Come home now, or I'm packing Tyler's bags and we're leaving. The silence on the other end of the phone stretched so long I thought the call had dropped. I'll be right there, Mark said quietly. An hour later, we were sitting in our living room facing each other like adversaries. Tyler was at school, thank God. I couldn't have handled this conversation with him in the house. You knew, I said. It wasn't a question. Mark's face crumpled. Sarah, you knew Emma used the same clinic. You knew there might be a connection. How long have you known? I suspected after Dr. Kim called. Emma's daughter. She has your eyes. Your exact green eyes. But lots of people have green eyes, so I thought maybe. Emma has a daughter? The room was spinning again. Lily. She's 8. She looks just like you, Sarah. When I saw her picture on Emma's Facebook, I thought it was just a coincidence, but after the DNA results, the betrayal hit me in waves. Not only was Tyler not my biological child, but my husband had been in contact with the woman who likely was Tyler's real mother and who was raising my biological daughter. Is that why you were messaging her? Why you were cheating on me? It wasn't like that. At first, it really was just friendship. But when I started seeing the similarities between you and Lily, I got curious. I started talking to Emma more, trying to figure out if there was a connection without telling her about our situation. And then you started sleeping with her. Mark's silence was answer enough. Jesus Christ, Mark. You've been having an affair with the woman who's raising my daughter while I've been raising hers? We don't know for sure. Don't. Just don't. I stood up and paced to the window, looking out at our perfectly manicured suburban yard. How long has the affair been going on? 6 months. Does she know? About the clinic, about Tyler? No. I never told her. I wasn't even sure until the DNA results came back. I turned to face him, and the look on his face, guilty, ashamed, but also something else, made me realize there was more. What else, Mark? What else haven't you told me? He ran his hands through his hair, a gesture I'd once found endearing and now just made me furious. Emma's been having problems with Lily's father. He left when Lily was 3. Emma's been struggling as a single mom, and she's been talking about wanting to find Lily's biological family. She thinks there might have been a mix-up at the clinic. The final piece of the puzzle clicked into place. She knows. She suspects. She's been asking me questions about Tyler, about our family medical history. I think she's figured it out. The confrontation. I couldn't take it anymore. That same day, I got Emma's address from the private investigator and drove to her house. It was about 30 minutes away in a slightly rundown neighborhood, not poor, but clearly struggling compared to our suburb. Emma answered the door looking exactly like I remembered her from the Christmas party, except tired. There were dark circles under her eyes, and she was wearing scrubs. I later learned she worked as a nurse at the local hospital. "Sarah?" She looked genuinely surprised to see me. "We need to talk." She glanced behind her, then stepped outside and closed the door. "Lily's doing homework. Is this about Mark?" The fact that she immediately knew why I was there told me everything I needed to know. "It's about Tyler and Lily." Her face went pale. I was afraid of this. We sat in her car in her driveway and talked for 2 hours. Emma had suspected the mix-up for months. Lily looked nothing like Emma's ex-boyfriend, but she had my eyes, my smile, even some of my mannerisms. Emma had been doing research on the fertility clinic and had learned about the malpractice lawsuits. "I hired a lawyer last month," Emma admitted. "I was trying to figure out how to approach you and Mark about getting DNA tests done. I never expected. I had no idea Mark and I were having an affair?" I finished. She started crying. "I'm so sorry, Sarah. I know how this looks. But I swear, it wasn't planned. I was lonely, and when Mark started messaging me, it felt like fate or something. And then when I started suspecting about the kids." "You thought what? That sleeping with my husband would make this whole situation easier?" "I don't know what I was thinking. I've been a single mom for 5 years, and Mark was kind and attentive, and I started having feelings for him. The kids thing felt separate." "Separate? Emma, you're raising my biological daughter while sleeping with my husband. How is any of this separate?" We both sat there crying for a while. Despite everything, I couldn't bring myself to hate her. She was as much a victim of this situation as I was. The clinic had stolen both our chances at raising our biological children, and Mark had made everything so much more complicated. "What do you want to do?" Emma finally asked. "I don't know. I need to meet her. I need to see Lily." Emma nodded. "And I'd like to meet Tyler, if that's okay." Emma arranged for me to meet Lily the following Saturday at a park halfway between our houses. She didn't tell Lily who I was, just that I was a friend who wanted to meet her. I was terrified. How do you meet your biological daughter for the first time when she's already 8 years old and thinks someone else is her mother? Lily was beautiful. She had my exact eyes, not just the color but the shape. My nose, my smile, even the way she pushed her hair behind her ear when she was thinking was exactly what I did. It was like looking at a childhood photo of myself. But she was also completely Emma's daughter. She had Emma's confidence, Emma's easy laugh. She called Emma Mommy, with such natural affection that it broke my heart. This was my biological child, but she wasn't mine. Emma had raised her, loved her, been there for every milestone I'd missed. We played on the swings for about an hour. Lily was chatty and funny, telling me about school and her friends and her favorite books. She was smart, really smart, and I recognized some of my own interests reflected in her personality. She loved to read, just like I did. She was fascinated by puzzles and word games. She asked thoughtful questions about everything. When it was time to leave, Lily hugged me goodbye. "Are you going to come play with me again?" she asked. I looked at Emma, who nodded. "I hope so, sweetheart." Driving home, I cried harder than I had since this whole nightmare began. Lily was wonderful, and I could see myself in her, but she wasn't mine to love. Emma had earned that right through 8 years of 3 a.m. fevers and first days of school and scraped knees and bedtime stories. The following week, Emma came to our house to meet Tyler. Mark was at work. I'd insisted on that. This meeting was about the kids, not about their affair. Tyler was shy at first, which was unusual for him. He's normally very outgoing, but something about Emma made him cautious. Maybe he sensed the tension, or maybe he just knew something important was happening. But within an hour, they were playing video games together and Tyler was showing off his baseball card collection. Emma was natural with him, patient and interested in everything he had to say. She asked about his favorite subjects in school, his friends, his hobbies. I watched them interact and felt my heart breaking all over again. There was a connection there, nothing dramatic, but Tyler responded to Emma in a way that was different from how he acted around other adults. More open, somehow, more himself. After Emma left, Tyler asked me, "Who was that lady, Mom?" She was really nice. I didn't know how to answer. "Just a friend of Daddy's and mine. She looked kind of like Lily." My blood froze. Who's Lily, sweetheart? A girl at the park last weekend. When I was with Daddy. She had the same eyes as that lady. Mark had taken Tyler to meet Lily. Without telling me, I felt another layer of betrayal settle over me like a heavy blanket. The impossible decision. That night, after Tyler was asleep, I confronted Mark again. You took Tyler to meet Lily? He didn't even try to deny it. Emma and I thought the kids should meet each other. They might be. They are siblings, biologically. Don't you dare call them siblings. And you don't get to make decisions about Tyler's life without me. Especially not decisions involving your girlfriend. She's not my girlfriend. We ended things after you found out about the mix-up. Oh, how noble of you. You ended your affair after you found out you were sleeping with the woman who's raising my biological daughter. What a saint. We fought until almost dawn. Mark kept insisting that we needed to figure out what was best for the kids. That maybe Tyler and Lily should know each other, should know the truth about their biological parents. I wasn't ready for any of that. The whole situation was too overwhelming, too complicated, too painful. But over the next few days, I couldn't stop thinking about it. Tyler had seemed happy after meeting Lily. He'd mentioned her several times, asking when he might see that nice girl again. And Lily had asked Emma about me, apparently calling me the pretty lady from the park. Emma and I started texting, trying to figure out a path forward. She was surprisingly understanding about the whole affair situation, more understanding than I would have been in her shoes. I know how wrong it was, she texted one evening. I knew Mark was married, and I let myself believe what I wanted to believe. That maybe you two were headed for divorce anyway, that maybe this was all meant to happen. I was stupid and selfish. Despite everything, I was starting to like Emma. She was honest, she clearly adored Lily, and she seemed to genuinely care about what was best for both kids. In another universe, we might have been friends. But this universe was complicated by the fact that she'd been sleeping with my husband while raising my biological daughter. The legal reality. I consulted with a family law attorney named Rebecca Walsh to understand our legal options. The consultation was devastating. Legally, you and Mark are Tyler's parents, Rebecca explained. You've raised him since birth, you're on his birth certificate, and you've established parental rights through 8 years of care. No court would remove him from your custody. What about Lily? That's more complicated. Emma is her legal mother and has been her primary caregiver. Even if DNA proves she's your biological daughter, courts are extremely reluctant to disrupt established family relationships. So I have no rights to my biological daughter? Not legal rights, no. But you might be able to arrange some kind of custody sharing or visitation agreement if Emma is willing. The key word is willing. It would have to be voluntary. And if Emma wanted Tyler? She'd have no legal standing. He's not legally her child. The legal reality was clear: both kids would stay with the parents who'd raised them. I would continue raising Tyler, who wasn't biologically mine, and Emma would continue raising Lily, who was. But knowing the legal reality didn't make the emotional reality any easier. 2 weeks later, everything came to a head. Emma had brought Lily over for a playdate with Tyler, and I was watching them together in our backyard. They played so naturally together, like they'd been siblings their whole lives. Tyler was protective of Lily, helping her reach the monkey bars and sharing his snacks with her. Lily looked up to Tyler, following him around and laughing at all his jokes. Mark came home early from work and found us all together, Emma and me, sitting on the back patio, watching Tyler and Lily play. The look on his face was unreadable. "This is nice," he said carefully, joining us at the patio table. Emma immediately got tense. "I should probably take Lily home." "No," I said quickly. "Stay. We need to talk about this situation like adults." For the next hour, the three of us had the most honest conversation we'd had since this nightmare began. Mark admitted that he'd fallen in love with Emma, that the affair had started because he felt emotionally disconnected from me, but had continued because he genuinely cared about her. "I love you both," he said, looking back and forth between Emma and me. "I know that's terrible and selfish, but it's the truth." Emma admitted that she'd developed feelings for Mark too, but that she felt guilty about the timing and the circumstances. "I've been a single mom for so long, and Mark made me feel cared for in a way I hadn't felt in years. And I admitted that I didn't know if I could ever forgive either of them. but that I was starting to care about Emma as a person, and I definitely loved both Tyler and Lily. What do we do with all of this? Emma asked. That's when Mark said something that changed everything. What if we shared custody? Both kids, both families. What if Tyler and Lily could grow up together, knowing both their biological and adoptive parents? Emma and I stared at him. That's insane, I said. We can't just blend our families like that. You cheated on me with her. But think about the kids, Mark pressed. They're biologically siblings. They clearly like each other. And they deserve to know both their biological parents. So what are you suggesting? That we all play house together? That I share my husband with your girlfriend? I'm suggesting that we put the kids first and figure out the rest as we go. That night, after Emma and Lily went home, I was cleaning up from dinner when I found something that changed everything. Tyler had left his backpack by the front door, and some papers had fallen out. One of them was a drawing he'd made at school, titled, My Family. In the drawing, Tyler had drawn 5 people himself: Mark, me, Emma, and Lily. We were all holding hands and smiling. At the bottom, in Tyler's careful 8-year-old handwriting, it said, I love my whole family. I sat on our entryway floor and sobbed. Tyler had already figured out what the adults were struggling with. Somehow, this 8-year-old boy understood that family isn't just about biology or marriage certificates or who sleeps in which bed. It's about love and care and commitment. But I also realized something else. I was done. Done with the lies, done with the deception, done with trying to make this impossible situation work. I couldn't stay married to Mark. Not after everything. The betrayal was too deep, the trust too broken. And I couldn't handle sharing custody of Tyler with Emma while watching my husband be in love with someone else. But I also couldn't abandon Tyler. He wasn't my biological son, but he was my son in every way that mattered. I'd raised him, loved him, been there for every moment of his life. And Lily. God, Lily. She was my biological daughter, but she belonged with Emma. Emma had earned the right to be her mother. The next morning, I called my sister Kate in Arizona. We'd always been close, and I needed someone to talk to who wasn't involved in this mess. Come stay with me for a while, Kate said after I'd explained everything. Bring Tyler. You both need space to think. I can't take Tyler away from Mark. Despite everything, Mark is his father, and Tyler adores him. So what are you going to do? That's when I said it out loud for the first time. I think I'm going to leave. Divorce Mark and start over somewhere else. What about Tyler? That's the part one can't figure out. Tyler isn't biologically mine, but I can't imagine my life without him. But I also can't stay in this situation. Kate was quiet for a long time. What would be best for Tyler? It was the question I'd been avoiding. What would actually be best for Tyler? Tyler loved Mark unconditionally. Mark, despite his flaws as a husband, was a good father. Tyler also clearly loved Emma and Lily. He'd been asking when he could see them again every single day. Tyler had a whole life here: his school, his friends, his baseball team, his dog. Moving across the country with me would mean leaving behind everything familiar except for one parent who wasn't even his biological mother. But staying would mean sharing him with Emma, watching Mark rebuild his life with another woman, and living with the constant reminder that the family I'd thought was mine had been built on a lie. I made my decision on a Tuesday. Mark was at work, Tyler was at school, and I was sitting in our living room surrounded by 8 years of family photos. Pictures of Tyler's first steps, his first birthday, his first day of school. Pictures of our family vacations, Christmas mornings, birthday parties. In every single photo, Tyler looked happy and loved. He was surrounded by people who cared about him: Mark, me, our extended families, our friends. He had a good life here. I called a divorce attorney and started the process. I asked for joint custody of Tyler not because of biology, but because I'd been his mother for 8 years and I loved him. I didn't want alimony or half the house or any of the things I could have fought for. I just wanted to be able to remain part of Tyler's life. But I also started looking at jobs in other states. I needed a fresh start, away from this small town where everyone would eventually know our business. Away from the constant reminders of the life I'd thought I had. I found a teaching position in Portland, Oregon, starting in the fall. It was a good school, a good opportunity, and 3,000 miles away from all of this mess. The final confrontation. I told Mark about the divorce papers on a Friday evening after Tyler had gone to bed. We were in our kitchen again, the same kitchen where we'd celebrated Tyler's first word, where we'd fought about Emma's Facebook messages, where we'd processed the DNA results that destroyed our marriage. "You're really leaving?" Mark asked quietly. "I'm really leaving. What about Tyler? I want joint custody. I know he's not biologically mine, but I've been his mother for 8 years. I love him, Mark." Mark nodded slowly. "I would never try to keep him from you. You're the best mother he could ask for." It was the first kind thing he'd said to me in months. "What about Emma and Lily?" "That's up to you and Emma to figure out. I won't be part of it anymore. Sarah, I know I've made mistakes." "Mistakes?" I laughed bitterly. "Mark, you had an affair with the woman who's raising my biological daughter while I was raising her biological son. You lied to me for months. You made decisions about Tyler without consulting me. These weren't mistakes, they were choices. I love you," he said desperately. "I know it doesn't seem like it, but I do love you. You love the idea of having everything. You want me and Emma and both kids and your perfect suburban life. But you can't have it all, Mark. That's not how life works." We sat in silence for a while, both of us crying. 10 years of marriage, 12 years together, and it was ending like this. "When will you tell Tyler?" Mark finally asked. "This weekend. I want to do it together." Saturday morning, Mark and I sat Tyler down in our living room. He was still in his pajamas, eating cereal and watching cartoons, completely oblivious to the fact that his world was about to change forever. "Buddy, we need to talk to you about something important," Mark began. Tyler muted the TV and looked at us with those serious eyes that reminded me so much of Mark. "Are you guys getting divorced?" The question caught us both off guard. "Why would you ask that?" I said. "Because Jenny's parents got divorced last year, and she said they had lots of serious talks before they told her. And you guys have been having lots of serious talks. Kids are so much more perceptive than we give them credit for." "Yes, sweetheart," I said gently. "Mommy and Daddy are getting divorced." Tyler's lower lip started trembling. "Is it because of me?" "Oh, honey, no." I pulled him into my lap, this boy who wasn't biologically mine but who I loved more than life itself. "This has nothing to do with you. Sometimes grown-ups just can't stay married anymore, but that doesn't mean we love you any less." "Where will I live?" Mark and I looked at each other. "You'll live with Daddy most of the time, but you'll come visit Mommy too. I'm moving to a new city for a new job, but I'll come back to visit you lots, and you can come visit me." "What about Emma and Lily?" Again, Tyler surprised us with his awareness of the situation. "What about them?" Mark asked carefully. "Are they going to be part of our family now?" I couldn't answer that question. Mark would have to figure out his relationship with Emma and how Tyler fit into it. "We're still figuring that out, buddy," Mark said. "But no matter what happens, you're my son and I love you." Tyler cried then, and we all held each other on our living room couch. It was probably the last time the three of us would be together like that. Emma came over that afternoon to talk about how the divorce would affect Lily's relationship with Tyler. She brought Lily with her, and the kids went to Tyler's room to play while we talked. "I heard about the divorce," Emma said awkwardly. "Mark called me this morning." "Are you happy?" I asked bluntly. She looked shocked. "Happy? Sarah, no. I never wanted to break up your marriage. But now you get what you want. Mark, and Tyler part-time, and your daughter. I don't want it like this. I never wanted you to get hurt." I studied her face, trying to read her sincerity. "Do you love him?" "Yes," she whispered. "But I love you too, in a different way. You're Lily's biological mother, and watching you with her, I can see how much you care about her. She's not mine to care about. You raised her. You're her mother. Biology matters too. You gave her life. You gave her a life. There's a difference." We talked for 2 hours about how to handle the kids' relationship going forward. Emma wanted Tyler and Lily to remain close. They were biologically siblings, after all. I agreed, but I made it clear that I wouldn't be part of any big happy blended family scenario. "I need distance," I told her. From Mark, from this situation, from the constant reminder that my entire family was built on a medical mistake. "What about Lily? Will you? Do you want to stay in touch with her?" It was the question I'd been dreading. Did I want a relationship with my biological daughter who called another woman, Mom? I don't know, I answered honestly. Maybe someday, but not now. It's too complicated, too painful. Emma nodded, tears in her eyes. I understand. My last day in Ohio was 3 weeks later. I'd packed my car with everything that mattered to me, which turned out to be surprisingly little. Most of our stuff was Tyler's anyway, his toys, his clothes, his furniture. I took some photos, some books, and my grandmother's jewelry. Everything else could stay. Tyler was spending the day with Mark, but they came by in the evening to say goodbye. Tyler ran into my arms and clung to me like he used to when he was little and had nightmares. I don't want you to go, Mommy. I know, baby. I don't want to go either. But sometimes grown-ups have to make hard decisions. Will you come back? I'll come visit in a few weeks, and you can come see me in Oregon during spring break. We'll FaceTime every day, okay? Tyler nodded against my shoulder, and I memorized the feeling of holding him. This boy who wasn't biologically mine but who had made me a mother. Who had taught me what unconditional love really meant. Mark was quiet during the goodbye, but as I was getting in my car, he grabbed my arm. I'm sorry, Sarah, for everything. You deserved better than this. Yes, I said simply. I did. Emma and Lily came by just as I was about to leave. Lily ran up to me and hugged my legs. Are you really leaving? I am, sweetheart. Will I see you again? I looked at Emma, who nodded encouragingly. Maybe someday. Emma walked me to my car. Take care of yourself, Sarah. And, thank you. For what? For giving me Lily. For raising Tyler to be such a wonderful boy. For handling all of this with more grace than I would have. I couldn't respond to that without breaking down completely, so I just nodded and got in my car. As I drove away from my house, the house where I'd brought Tyler home from the hospital, where we'd celebrated his first steps. Where I'd discovered my entire life was a lie, I looked in my rearview mirror and saw Tyler running after my car. Mark caught up with him and scooped him up, but Tyler kept reaching toward my car until I turned the corner and couldn't see them anymore. It's been 6 months since I moved to Portland. I have a small apartment downtown, close to my new school. I teach 4th grade now, and my students remind me daily why I love this job. Kids are resilient, honest, and endlessly hopeful in ways that adults forget how to be. Tyler and I FaceTime every day, just like I promised. He tells me about school, about his friends, about the baseball team he joined. He also tells me about Emma and Lily, who are now a regular part of his life. Emma moved in with Mark 3 months ago, and apparently Tyler loves having a big sister. It breaks my heart and makes me happy at the same time. Tyler visited me for spring break last month. We went to the zoo, explored downtown Portland, and hiked in the Columbia River Gorge. It was wonderful, but when I put him on the plane back to Ohio, I cried for 3 days. I've started dating someone, a fellow teacher named David, who makes me laugh and doesn't ask too many questions about my past. It's nothing serious yet, but it's nice to feel like I might have a future that isn't defined by the mess I left behind in Ohio. I've also started therapy to work through the trauma of discovering that my entire family was built on a medical mistake. My therapist, Rebecca, helps me separate my identity as Tyler's mother from my biological connection to him. Love isn't about DNA, she reminds me. You were Tyler's mother for 8 years, not because of genetics, but because of choice and commitment and daily acts of care. She's right, but it still hurts. Last week, I got a call from David Martinez, the private investigator I'd hired almost a year ago. I'd forgotten he was still working on the case. Sarah, I found something you need to know about. He'd discovered that Dr. Richard Steinberg, the fertility doctor who'd performed our IVF procedures, had deliberately mixed up embryos and eggs at multiple fertility clinics across 3 states. It wasn't an accident, it was intentional. He was conducting some kind of unauthorized genetic experiment. He wanted to see what happened when children were raised by non-biological parents. He documented everything, kept detailed files on all the families involved. My blood ran cold. How many families? At least 47 that we've found so far. Maybe more. Tyler and Lily weren't the only ones. There were dozens of other families out there dealing with the same nightmare we'd been through. There's more, David continued. Dr. Steinberg is dead. He died of cancer 2 years ago. But he left behind detailed records of all his experiments, including video recordings of his reasoning. I want to see them. Sarah, I don't think. I want to see them. David sent me the files that afternoon. I waited until evening, poured myself a large glass of wine, and opened the video recordings. Dr. Richard Steinberg looked like every fertility doctor I'd ever met, older, white, confident to the point of arrogance. In the videos, he explained his research in clinical terms that made my skin crawl. I wanted to study the nature versus nurture debate in real time, he said to the camera. By placing genetically unrelated children with families, I could observe how much of child development is truly biological versus environmental. He talked about Tyler and Lily specifically. About how he deliberately switched our embryos because Mark and I were highly educated, stable parents, while Emma was a single mother from a lower socioeconomic background. He wanted to see if my biological daughter would thrive in Emma's environment, and if Emma's biological son would benefit from being raised in our more advantageous household. The casual way he discussed destroying our lives, treating us like lab rats, made me physically sick. But the worst part was the end of the video. Initial observations suggest that children bond with their adoptive parents regardless of biological connection. However, when biological parents meet their genetic offspring, there appears to be an immediate recognition and attraction that suggests genetic memory or instinct. He'd been watching us. Somehow, he'd been documenting our lives, our struggles, our pain, and treating it all like data points in his sick experiment. The lawsuit. David connected me with a class action lawsuit against Drive, Steinberg's estate, and the fertility clinics he'd worked with. 47 families, all victims of his illegal experiments. We were suing for damages, emotional distress, and the cost of the therapy we'd all need to process this betrayal. The lawsuit made national news. I did several interviews, always keeping Tyler's name out of the media, talking about how Drive Steinberg had destroyed dozens of families for his own twisted research. Mark called me after seeing one of the interviews on TV. "Why didn't you tell me about the investigation?" he asked. "Because it doesn't change anything for us. Tyler is still your son, Lily is still Emma's daughter, and you still cheated on me with the woman who's raising my biological child. But it explains everything. The mix-up wasn't random, this guy targeted us specifically. So what? It doesn't make what you did any less wrong." Mark was quiet for a long time. "Emma and I are engaged." The words hit me like a physical blow, even though I'd been expecting them. "Congratulations." Tyler's excited. He wants to be the ring bearer. "That's nice. I couldn't manage anything else." "Sarah, I know this is hard, but don't. Just don't. I hope you're happy together." "I really do. But I can't talk about this with you." I hung up and cried for the first time in months. Not because I still loved Mark, not anymore. But because it felt like the final closing of a door on the life I'd thought I had. The lawsuit settlement came through last month. Each family received $2.3 million in damages. It's enough money to change my life completely. I could buy a house, go back to school, travel the world, do anything I wanted. But it also means I have to make a decision I've been avoiding for almost a year. Emma called me 2 weeks ago. The settlement money means I can afford to give Tyler the kind of opportunities Mark's been providing. Private school, college savings, all of it. I want to share custody of both kids. She wants me to move back to Ohio. To be part of Tyler and Lily's lives on a regular basis. To help raise both children, the son who isn't biologically mine and the daughter who is. "They miss you," Emma said. "Both of them. Tyler talks about you constantly, and Lily asks about the pretty lady who played with her at the park." "What about Mark?" "Mark and I are getting married, but that doesn't mean you can't be part of the kids' lives. We could make it work: weekends, holidays, school events. Tyler needs his mom, Sarah. And Lily. She deserves to know her biological mother. It's the offer I dreamed about 6 months ago and the nightmare I've been running from ever since." Coming back to Ohio would mean sharing custody of Tyler with Mark and Emma. It would mean watching my ex-husband raise my biological daughter with another woman. It would mean being constantly reminded of the life I lost and the lies I lived. But it would also mean being Tyler's mom again, really and truly. It would mean having the chance to know Lily, to be part of her life in a way that matters. It would mean both kids could grow up knowing both their biological and adoptive parents. So here I am, at 2 a.m., typing this all out and asking strangers on the internet for advice about the most impossible decision I've ever had to make. Do I go back to Ohio and try to build some kind of unconventional family arrangement with my ex-husband and his fiancée? Do I put Tyler and Lily first and figure out how to co-parent across biological lines? Or do I stay in Oregon and build a new life, visiting Tyler when I can and letting Emma raise Lily without my interference? Tyler isn't biologically my son, but he's the child I raised and the child I love. Lily is biologically my daughter, but she's never been mine in any way that counts. Emma destroyed my marriage, but she's also been a good mother to my biological child and genuinely seems to care about Tyler's well-being. Mark betrayed me in the deepest way possible, but he's also Tyler's father and he loves that boy as much as I do. The settlement money means I have choices I've never had before. I could go anywhere, do anything. But the one thing I want most, my old life back, before the DNA test and the affairs and the revelations, is the one thing I can never have. I've been in therapy, I've built a new life. I've started to heal from the trauma of discovering that my entire family was the result of one man's sick experiment. But I can't stop thinking about Tyler's drawing, the one where he included all of us as his family, holding hands and smiling. Maybe an 8-year-old boy understands something about family that the adults in his life are still struggling to figure out. Or maybe I'm just a woman who can't let go of the children she loves, even when staying away might be better for everyone. I have to make a decision by the end of the month. Emma is buying a bigger house with her settlement money, one with room for both kids and space for me when I visit. Mark has agreed to the custody arrangement, and he's even offered to help me find a teaching job back in Ohio. Everyone is being so reasonable, so mature, so focused on what's best for the kids. But what about what's best for me? Is it selfish to want to be part of Tyler's daily life? Even if it means sharing him with the woman who slept with my husband? Is it wrong to want a relationship with Lily, even if it confuses her understanding of who her real mother is? Or am I being selfish by staying away? Am I depriving both kids of the chance to have relationships with their biological parents? Just because I can't handle the emotional complexity? I don't know what's right anymore. I don't know if there is a right answer to this situation. All I know is that I love Tyler more than anything in the world, even though he's not biologically mine. And I feel drawn to Lily in a way I can't explain, even though she'll never really be my daughter. I also know that I'll never forgive Mark for what he did to our marriage, and I'll never be comfortable with Emma. No matter how nice she is or how well she treats the kids. But maybe love isn't supposed to be comfortable. Maybe family isn't supposed to make sense. Maybe sometimes you just have to choose the hard thing because it's the right thing for the people you love. So, AITA for wanting to divorce my husband and leave him with the kid after finding out I'm not biologically the mom? And what would you do if you were me?